Hello， 请大家保持静音。Please keep you muted. Okay, thank you. Let's wait for one more minute. Stephanie, I think you can change to the PowerPoint for Joshua. Stephanie? Hi, everybody. Welcome to join us today, March 24th at 4 p.m. Today, we have two special speakers. We feel so honored to have them with us. The first one is Dr. Joshua Grill from UCI MIND, and also Ruobing Li, who is the translator for Dr. Grill. And today we have two segments. And the first one will be presented by UCI MIND, and the second one will be AARP California. And we will save time for the audience and participants to ask questions for these two wonderful speakers. So don't rush to turn on your microphone. Just type in your questions or comments in the chat room. In English or Chinese, fine. You know, their translators are fantastic, so don't worry about it. OK， 大家好，欢迎来参加今天乐活50家的这一场非常重磅级的讲座。我们请到了两位专家，第一位是来自 UCI Mind 的 Dr. Joshua Grill， 他将要来告诉大家，现在对于阿兹海默症跟失智症是一个什么样的情况，是不是有一些新的研究发现，大家看到了新希望。那第二位呢是 AARP California 的 Rachel Stone。他要来跟我们讲一讲，如果我们家里有失智的病人或者家人需要我们照护的时候，应该怎么样制定跟执行这个照护的计划？那在社区上又有什么样的这个资源是可以取得的？这个对很多的家庭是非常重要的。那到最后我们会留10到15分钟的时间给大家问问题。如果你有问题或者有任何 comments question，直接打在我们的聊天室，打中文、英文都可以，他们两位都有翻译，所以不要担心，好不好？那我们今天就开始，我们不耽误大家的时间。So, Dr. Grill, I'm going to pass the microphone to you.
Thank you so much, Amanda, and thank you to everyone from Happy 50 Plus for the opportunity to present to you today. It's really an honor for me and for all of us at UCI Mind to have the chance to tell you a little bit about our work and just as importantly, where the field is currently in our pursuit of solutions for Alzheimer's disease and other dementias. As you heard, I'm grateful to my colleague who is also an investigator at UCI Mind, Ruobing Li, who has a long history of working with especially Chinese families in our research enterprise, who will help me by translating today's presentation. Robin, you want to say hello? And
hi, 谢谢大家，我们非常荣幸跟那个乐活50家的，就是大家朋友们一起分享今天的这个会议呢。我们呢就是跟大家讲一下我们 UCI Mind 在这一方面，在阿兹海默症研究这一方面的一些进展，还有呢，我们怎么样来对付这个疾病？谢谢。
Excellent. So our agenda today is relatively straightforward. We're going to answer what questions we get quite frequently about Alzheimer's and dementia when we do community talks. And then we're going to try to give you an update on where we are as a field as it relates to diagnosing and treating Alzheimer's disease and related dementias. And we'll close with a call to action because our goal is to find solutions that work for all people, and we need help from all people in order to do that.
好，那今天呢，我们的议程呢，就是我们首先呢，就是因为我们经常会被问到这样的问题哈，阿兹海默症及失智症到底它们有些什么区别啊？那么这个呢，我们就简单的讲一下，然后呢，我们再给大家让大家了解一下我们现在比如说对阿兹海默症和失智症的诊断或者治疗这些方面，那么我们一些什么进展，我们正在做什么？那么最后呢，因为研究呢需要大家来参加，我们要动员大家来给我们的研究呢，就是大家都来加入参加，积极参加，谢谢你们。
So the overwhelming, most frequent question we receive is, what's the difference between Alzheimer's disease and dementia? And I often describe dementia as an umbrella term. And if we click the mouse one more time, I think we'll see some things fall under the umbrella. We know that, yep, that was okay, go ahead. Under the umbrella, there are a variety of different conditions or diseases of the brain that can cause dementia. Dementia means that a person suffers from thinking problems that prevent them from living life the way they once did. And overwhelmingly, the most common cause of dementia is Alzheimer's disease.
好，那么我们被经常问到的问题呢，就是阿兹海默症和这个失智症到底有什么区别哈？那么我们呢是把这个失智症呢是大家看到了像一个大伞一样，那么这个伞下面呢就是有一些不同的原因引起失智症。那么这个失智症呢，就是说一个人呢在他的智能方面或者接受的能力方面，那么就是对他的日常生活呢有所影响了。那么下面大家看到有各种不同的原因，阿兹海默这个是主要的，就是引起失智症的一个主要原因。
On the next slide, you'll see Dr. Alois Alzheimer, who first characterized a patient by the name of August Dieter, shown here as well, who developed changes in her cognitive abilities late in life, and he followed for the remainder of her days and described in the literature as the first case of the disease that would later take on his name.
好，那么这篇这个上面呢，我们看到哈，就是 Dr. Alois Alzheimer， 那么他的病人哈，他是在这个就是第一个病人这个身上就发现了一些他的变化哈。那么他这个变化呢，就是我们所知道的阿兹海默症的一些症状。那么到这个疾病呢，我们大家也可以看到了，就是用这个 Dr. Alzheimer 他的这个名字来命名的，是因为他首先发现的。
When Alzheimer followed August Dieter for the remainder of her life and actually examined her brain at autopsy, he found things that he recognized even more than 100 years ago as abnormal. And those things are illustrated in this cartoon. And these are still the things we study when we study Alzheimer's disease, namely that within the brain of a person with Alzheimer's disease, we know there will be abnormal accumulations of what we call plaques and tangles. And those plaques and tangles will lead to degeneration that affects the brain's ability to perform and function normally.
好，那么阿兹海默医生哈，他在他的这个第一个病人，他在过世了，因为他是跟踪他嘛，在他过世了以后呢，就使用了他的大脑切片。那么虽然这个是已经很久很久以前了，但是呢，直到现在呢，我们对于阿兹海默症这个病因呢，还是当时阿兹海默医生他所发现的，就在大脑切片时候发现的，就是说的这个大脑的这个一些缠角。 或者是斑块，那么是这些呢引起了大脑的这个进行性的变化，引起了这个疾病。到现在为止，还是他当时发现的这些东西。
Now, since Alzheimer, and especially over the last 2 decades, especially, we have learned tremendous amounts more about what happens in the brain of a person with Alzheimer's disease, what these changes result from, and what we can do about it. This includes that we now understand the risk factors for Alzheimer's disease much better than ever before. And while about half of the risk for Alzheimer's disease is genetic, meaning that we inherit genes from our parents, about half is also environmental or lifestyle based. And this slide outlines the things that increase as well as the things that can decrease our risk for Alzheimer's disease. So I'll let Robin translate that, and then we'll leave this slide up and talk about these things briefly.
好，那么这在过去的20多年当中，通过各种各样的研究，那么我们对这个病呢，也是有了进一步的一些认识啊。那么在我们这个认识当中呢，就是关于这个风险因素啊，风险因素呢50%呢是遗传的，但是另外的50%呢，可能是因为环境呀、生活方式的这些原因。那么下面呢，我们就要看一下这个生活方式的哪一些我们是属于风险因素，哪一些呢我们可以通过改变它来使我们呢来对这个疾病呢有一些保护作用。
So the thing we don't have on this slide is the strongest risk factor for Alzheimer's disease, which is age. The older we get, the more our risk of getting Alzheimer's disease increases. But other factors listed here matter as well. I mentioned genetics, and we've learned a lot about the genetics of Alzheimer's disease. But even now, we can't do genetic tests and determine if someone will or will not get Alzheimer's disease in their lifetime.
好，那么我们最大的一个风险因素，在这个上面虽然没有写，但是呢，最大的风险因素呢，就是我们年龄这个问题，年龄越大，那么风险就越大。那么在这个里边呢，我们讲到的就是这个基因的这个因素啊。那么基因的因素呢，在我们这个疾病当中呢，也是占一个部分啊。但是呢，其他的呢，我们是可以改变的。
We've also learned that how we treat our bodies and how we treat our brains throughout life affect our risk of getting cognitive problems or Alzheimer's disease later in life. And so we all should strive to lead a brain healthy lifestyle. In fact, AARP and the global coalition of brain health has produced recommendations, as have the American Council for Preventative Medicine, the American Heart Association, the American Stroke Association, the Alzheimer's Association, and all of these things really come back to some basic core principles. Global Council on Brain Health, it clicked in there, that we should control our weight, avoid obesity, control our blood pressure, keep our cholesterol levels in the normal range, in particular our LDL cholesterol levels, get a healthy diet that includes regular consumption of fish and dark green leafy vegetables, get our exercise, physical exercise activity, stay mentally and socially active, and get a good night's sleep every night. Because in fact, when we sleep, we clean our brain of toxic things that don't belong there, including the beta amyloid protein that accumulates in the plaques of Alzheimer's disease. Sorry, Robin, that was a lot.
I'll try. So, 那么就是说是这个生活方式的改变哈，讲到。那么生活方式的改变呢，就是我们前面提到的几个组织哈，我能够记得，我就说一下，就是关于这些组织呢，比如说是要重视大脑健康这个组织，然后呢是中风协会、阿兹海默症学会、心脏协会，那么所有的这些协会呢，就是围绕着这个生活方式，那么它都有一些建议。 那么我们对自己的身体或者对自己的大脑要保护，那么要一方面呢，当然是饮食方面哈，我们要吃绿的蔬菜，要多吃鱼。另外呢，也是要锻炼身体。还有一个呢，就是睡眠，这个是非常重要的。那么现在的研究呢表明，在睡眠当中呢，你在睡觉的时候呢，实际上是你的大脑呢在做一个清道夫的工作，就是清除你大脑里边沉积的一些异样的蛋白质啊这些。那么有一个好的睡眠、锻炼、饮食，那么这些都是我们可以改变的生活方式。
So everyone should do these things to lower their risk for dementia later in life. But unfortunately, there's no recipe that we can give you to say definitively that you'll never get Alzheimer's disease if you do X, Y, and Z.
好，那么对于我们刚才讲到这些就是生活方式啊各方面的改变，那么我们建议的是每一个人都需要朝着健康的这种生活方式去努力啊。但是呢，我们就是不幸的是呢，我们现在不能给你一个就是一个菜单吧，或者什么什么说哦，你做了这些呢，就一定不会得。那有些人呢，可能是所有这些关于健康的这些做法，那么都做到了，但是呢，他还是可能会得这个疾病。
And this is why research to improve diagnosis and treatment is so important. On the next slide, I make the point that early diagnosis is extremely important for people with cognitive problems later in life.
好，那么就是为什么我们刚才讲到的了，你都做到了，为什么你还会得这个病？那么对于我们来讲呢，就是对于早期诊断呢，就是非常重要了。那么下面这个内容呢，我就讲一下，那么为什么要做早期诊断？
There are many reasons why early diagnosis is important. Certainly, we want to rule out or correct reversible causes of cognitive problems if they are present. But if Alzheimer's disease is the cause of a person's cognitive impairment, we believe that there's every reason to make the earliest possible diagnosis to help patients and their families make plans for what lies ahead. They may also wish to engage in research, including research of promising aggressive new treatments.
好，那么为什么说早期诊断很重要呢？那么就是说引起失智呢有很多的原因。好，那么我们首先呢要排除其他的一些原因，就是那些原因呢是可以改变的，就是可以改变它的整个疾病的路径的。但是呢，如果真的是你诊断到这个是阿兹海默症，是阿兹海默症引起的，那么这个大脑的变化。那么这个时候呢，如果早期诊断呢，我们就可以给家庭或者给病人呢，本身呢有一些计划的一些余地，他们希望能够有些什么计划，有些什么希望。另外呢，就是可以参加一些正在进行的一些临床实验呀，也可能会对他们的疾病的改观有所利益。
The next slide outlines the steps to getting a diagnosis at a place like UC Irvine. I want to say that your local primary care doctor, your general doctor, may be very comfortable making these diagnoses, but they may not. And in many cases, people need to seek specialist referrals from a doctor who truly understands the aging brain and cognitive performance to get the diagnosis.
那么下面我们就讲一下，比如说在我们 UCI 这个领域里边哈，我们是怎么来做这个诊断的？当然了，你们都有自己的家庭医生啊，可能看病啊找的医生，他们呢有些呢可能有这个能力把这个病诊断出来，有些呢不一定有，所以呢这一方面呢就要看一下，就是专业专科的医生，那么他们呢就是有些很多年的经验呀，来诊断或者是在治疗这种病也很有经验，要看这些专业的医生。
The diagnostic workup should include a clinical history to understand whether cognitive problems are new, the rate at which they came on, and what the potential underlying causes could be. Laboratory tests will be used to rule out some of those reversible causes of dementia. And again, at a place like UCI, neuroimaging will be key to make sure that if someone hasn't had a stroke or other abnormalities of the brain.
好，那么诊断呢，首先呢，就是说家庭这个病史啊，这个病史呢是非常重要的。那么我们就是很大程度上呢，我们就是要访问家庭的，就对这个病人接触最多的人，让他能够谈一谈他的病史，什么时候开始的。那么有些症状呢是过去什么时候有的呢，还是最近才有的？好，这些呢是家庭病史了。那么第二个呢，就是自己身体的一个神经科的一些检查。那么还有重要的就是实验室这个数据，验血呀，验其他的这个生物标志物啊这些，那么还有神经影像学哈，比如说大家熟悉的 MRI 呀、CT 啊这些，最后呢还有一个呢就是神经心理学的评估，也是我们平常说的这个就是记忆测试。那么这个记忆测试呢就包括很多细节的，好，这些呢就是一些基本的。我们为了要做到一个准确的诊断，所要进行的一些步骤。
Another common question we get is whether it's true that we can only diagnose Alzheimer's disease after a person passes away. And the definitive diagnosis of Alzheimer's disease is made by confirming that those plaques and tangles that Alzheimer saw in August Dieter's brain are present in the brain of someone who suffered from cognitive problems. We do now have tools, however, that can give us information about plaques and tangles while a person is still alive. There are multiple FDA-approved PET scans that can confirm the presence of plaques and tangles in the brain of a person suffering from memory problems.
好，那么我们经常碰到的问题呢，有人会问哈，那么这个阿兹海默症是不是要等到过世以后呢，大脑切片才能够诊断出来？那么那个呢，就是在我们过去多少年呢，就是一定要靠过去，一定要靠大脑切片才能最后诊断，因为切片里边就表现出来他的大脑里边有那些缠角，有那些斑块。但现在呢，我们越来越得到的工具呢是越来越多了，那么就是食品检验局它已经批准了一个，就是用 PET 来看一下大脑里边，那么在人活着的时候就可以看到大脑里边它的那些淀粉样蛋白或者是桃蛋白它的那些沉积。现在呢，我们可以到了这一步，就是通过 PET 这个影像。
And the next slide illustrates some incredibly promising research that has exploded in the last 2 years, especially to suggest that blood markers may ultimately be able to tell us who has plaques and tangles present in the brain and who does not. These data presented here demonstrate the difference between people with Alzheimer's disease and another form of dementia, but we expect that these blood tests could achieve routine clinical use in the coming years.
好，那么最近的研究呢，就表明哈，我们不是有一些生物标志物嘛？那么血液呢是其中的一个。那么通过验血来诊断这个阿兹海默症，那么这个呢就是最有希望的一个。那么在这儿呢，就是我们说到的，就是血浆生物标准的前景。那么这个呢是很多研究机构正在进行，相信不久的将来呢就可以做到，通过验血来做出诊断。
Of course, the other area of important research is developing treatments. Until recently, the FDA had approved only a small number of treatments for Alzheimer's disease. They're listed here as the ones that are most commonly used to provide care for people with Alzheimer's disease dementia. They exist in 2 classes, what we call the cholinesterase inhibitors, which are the first 3 drugs on this slide, as well as a 4th drug called Namenda that works as a separate class. Some of these drugs are approved in mild, moderate, and severe dementia. Namenda is approved only in moderate or severe, and there's a combination of one of the cholinesterase inhibitors and Namenda together in what's called Namzaric, that's also approved in moderate to severe disease.
好，那么这一章呢，我们是讲到的过去的这几十年呢，那么就是 FDA 就是认定的这些药哈。那么这些药呢，我们有些有中文翻译，有些没有中文翻译。那么根据不同的阶段，那么医生呢可以使用这几种药。那么 最近呢又出现了一个新的药，但是呢这些呢就是过去的20多年以来所用的药。
All of the drugs listed on this slide help. They help patients do a little better on cognitive tasks and activities of daily living when they're taking them. Unfortunately, none of these drugs actually slow the progression of Alzheimer's disease. And this is a disease that is relentless in its progressive nature. Over time, patients' cognitive performance and their ability to live independently will get steadily worse.
好，那么这些药呢，就是病人在用这个药的当中呢，对他的症状有所缓解，对他的一些，比如说是他的一些认知能力啊，还有日常生活这些，那么有些症状呢有所缓解，但是呢，没有哪一个药呢能够说是把这个整个疾病的进程呢把它慢下来，因为这个疾病呢，就是它是不断的进行性的一种对大脑的一种破坏。所以这些药呢，虽然可以缓解一些症状，但是它不能够停住这个症状发展的脚步。
So these drugs help, but what we really need are drugs that can slow or stop the progression of Alzheimer's disease. And on the next slide, we see an image from a scientific journal of the effects of a drug that was hoped to be what we would call disease modifying. A drug that could alter the underlying biology of the disease and slow the progression of it.
好，那么我们想要寻找的药呢，就是能够把这个疾病减慢、减速，或者最后呢停止，不要让它继续发展。那么这种药呢，我们就是看到这样的希望哈。这种药呢，我们是把它叫做是疾病应该说是检验疾病的那个修正吧哈。疾病修正呢，你看在这两个我们的影像里边呢，你就看到它里面的一些大脑的蛋白质的沉积，它的情况，正常的大脑和不正常的大脑，那么它这种情况就是疾病修正的这种药。那么下面我们看这个药是什么药。
So this is images from the clinical trials of a drug called aducanumab, which was actually approved by the FDA for Alzheimer's disease in 2021. And it is one of now 3 drugs that have been shown pretty convincingly to be able to lower the amount of amyloid in the brain of a person with Alzheimer's disease dementia. And that's what's pictured on the right. It's images from those PET scans that can measure amyloid plaques in the brain. And you see a brain full of amyloid in red and a brain after treatment with aducanumab, which lacks the red plaques.
好，那么这个药呢，它的机制就是它是什么一个机制呢？它就是你服用了以后呢，它就能够减少这个大脑这个就是蛋白样贝塔蛋白样这个淀粉它的那个沉积哈。那么这个呢是用来就是对疾病的，刚才我们说的一种修正，那么就是从根本上把这个你的淀粉沉积去掉了以后，那么就是你的大脑呢可能恢复一些功能啊，修补。那么大家看一下这两个图，在没有用药之前，那么这些红色的就显示了，那么用了药过后，那么这边这个大脑呢就是红色的这些蛋白质沉积的你就看不到了，所以这个药呢主要是清除这个蛋白质非正常的蛋白质的沉积。
Even though this new approval was exciting and the first in 15 years, it was also very controversial. And as a result, this drug is not widely used as yet. The clinical, well, go ahead, Robin.
好，那么虽然说这个药呢就是大家都觉得很激动，这个药出来以后就觉得很有希望，但是呢也有很大的争议，那就是为什么到现在为止，这个药是去年6、7月份出来的吧，到现在呢为什么用的不是那么普遍，不是那么多，就是还是有一定的争议哈。
So unfortunately, this remains controversial. The clinical trials of this drug were not conclusive about its ability to actually slow the progression of the disease, though it very convincingly demonstrated the ability to lower amyloid levels.
好，那么这个为什么说现在就是这个争议非常现在还是存在，而且呢很激烈哈？因为这个药呢，就是说它呢确实有显示能够降低或者是能够清除这个大脑的一部分蛋白质沉积，但是呢它的临床效用是不是就能够把这个失智的，就是让它的智力恢复，或者是让它减慢速度呢？因为这个呢还没有事实证明。
So the FDA granted accelerated approval to this drug, which means that the company needs to do another clinical trial to show whether the drug works, but they can market the drug and people can take it clinically now.
好，那么这个药呢，在批准的时候呢，是一种就是特殊条件下批准的哈，那批准了上市了，但是呢，他还要求这个制药公司呢是要继续做实验，那么要表明他们确实对这个疾病呢有治疗、有疗效。
But this drug is not for everyone, and we can go forward 2 slides now. There are very specific patients who may benefit, we really don't yet know, but who are most likely perhaps to benefit from this drug if it helps anyone. Those are going to be patients who are at the earliest stages of cognitive problems and dementia, who clearly have amyloid present in the brain and are not at increased risk to suffer from side effects of the drug.
好，那么这个药呢，并不是说每一个患这个病的人都可以用哈，它一个呢，它是用在轻度，就是我们说的这个轻度的智力障碍、轻度失智的这些患者，而且呢，就是它还要有一些副作用，那么它这个副作用不要让这个副作用就是对这部分人，如果有了副作用以后呢，可能就不适合他用了哈，那么要有它的安全性。
This drug really requires expert clinicians for its use. It's infused directly into the bloodstream, and the safety profile warrants a person who really understands and can care for people who are taking it. And so if it is to achieve wide-scale use, it will likely be in highly specialty centers.
好，那么用这个药的那个医生是需要有特殊的这方面的知识，而且呢有比较坚实的这方面、比较厚实的这方面的知识哈，因为它呢是直接是静脉注射的，所以呢如果是要大面积的用呢，肯定是要在一个非常集中的一个中心啊，有一些专家掌握这个用药的地方来大面积的使用。
I think it's important to say that even though this approval was controversial, it's still important and a milestone. It had been more than 15 years since we last had a drug approved for the treatment of Alzheimer's disease.
那我得说，虽然说是这个药啊，就是有争议很大，但是呢，不管怎么说呢，它是一个非常重要的里程碑，就是在这个研究这个药物方面啊，是个非常重要的里程碑。因为呢，过去的15年来呢，这个是第一次的一个新药，就过去的15年都没有什么新药。
I mentioned that 3 other drugs have been shown to reduce amyloid levels in the brain. And in the next year or 2, we expect to learn the results of studies whether they can slow the progression of Alzheimer's disease, which would certainly result in their approval as well.
好，那么现在呢，还有另外的3种药也在进行一些试验，就是这个实验。那么下1、2年呢，我们就可能得到它的实验结果，那么就看它能不能就是对这个疾病呢，就做出一些作用，就是有临床作用。那么那个时候呢，我们就希望他们这些药呢也能够得到批准。
And what is extremely exciting is the possibility that these amyloid drugs could be tested even before memory problems begin as potential preventative therapies. And studies like that are ongoing at UCI and elsewhere.
好，那么就是我们更激动的是，让我们更激动的是，就是说这些药呢，我们可以用在哪一些人身上呢？就是他们呢还没有出现，就是他们这些记忆力啊或者这些方面的，认知方面的这些症状之前，那么他只要大脑里边有存在这个非这个蛋白质沉淀啊这些东西呢，那我们就可以用了。在 UCI 呢，我们有这样的临床实验。
Similarly, as we have learned so much more about what is happening in the brain of a person with Alzheimer's disease leading up to and through their cognitive decline, we have numerous other very exciting targets for new treatments that need to be tested so that we can find better treatments or even combination of treatments that can slow or stop this disease in its tracks.
那么令人激动的是，我们就是有很多其他的方式，就是我们可以试验，就是在这个整个他一个人呢，就是得了这个病以后，或者是丧失了他的这个认知能力，这个整个过程中，那么我们有很多药物，很多正在实验的可以使用。
Ultimately, to bring these treatments into the clinic, what we need will be research studies called clinical trials to test them in human beings, in human participants. Research participation is actually the most consistent barrier to medical advances.
那么我们是有一些药物正在进行实验当中，但是呢，说到实验呢，那么我们就需要大家来参加这个在人的身上大家来参加这个实验，那么我们才能看到这些药物啊或者这些治疗方法的效果。
And in particular, recruitment overall is a barrier, but successful recruitment means recruiting quickly, but recruiting a population that represents everyone who suffers from a disease.
那我们在招聘这些参加实验的人的时候呢，我们就要面向所有的族裔，所有不同的人群。那么只有这样的话呢，我们的药物呢才能够对所有的人群都起作用。
And across all areas of research, and especially in clinical trials, we fail to represent the many different races, ethnicities, and other groups who are afflicted by Alzheimer's disease. And we are part of an NIH-funded effort to try to improve the inclusivity of Asian Americans in particular in our research.
好，那么在过去的很多研究当中呢，就是我们呢在这个包容各个民族、各个族裔这方面呢，就是实际上是做的不太好那么所以有些族裔呢就没有被招聘过来，没有在我们的实验中体现出来这个族裔的代表性。那么我们现在 UCI 呢是参加了这样一个设计这样一个科研项目，那么希望呢能够包括就所有族裔的，特别是亚裔、太平洋岛民。
So we've had an emphasis on Asian Americans at UCI MIND for many years, but now we are partnering with colleagues from UC San Francisco, UC Davis, Stanford, and other numerous community-based organizations to try to create a registry of 10,000 Asian Americans and Pacific Islanders who are willing to hear about research studies that they might be eligible to participate in.
好 ，UCI 呢，在很多年当中呢，我们就重视就是我们亚裔、族裔这些呢参加我们的研究。那么现在呢，我们参加了由 UC 旧金山 UC San Francisco 引头的这样一个大的一个研究项目。那么其中呢也包括斯坦福，还有呢 UC Davis， 还有其他的那些一些就是社区组织。那么主要呢就是对亚太和亚太裔美国人进行的一些研究。
So This effort is called the CARE Registry, which stands for the Collaborative Approach for Asian Americans and Pacific Islanders for Research and Education. It's confidential, free, and in fact, you get a $10 gift card for enrolling. And there's no obligation. You're simply saying, I am interested in learning about opportunities that might be available to me. And the whole goal is to make sure that Asian Americans and Pacific Islanders are represented, are given a voice in research to try to find solutions for Alzheimer's disease, caregiving research, aging research, etc.
好，那么这个研究呢是一个我们说的是呢是一个研究登记，或者是研究注册。那么它的主要目标呢就是面对亚裔和太平洋太平洋岛民这个社区这个人群那么就是希望呢大家都能够参加研究进来呢，你就是加入这个研究登记，那么就说明你愿意让这些研究课题呢来跟你联系它是完全是自愿的。你如果觉得我不愿意，那也没有关系就是但是呢你就是答应别人，让你研究人员呢可以跟你联系另外一个呢就是你就是注册以后呢还每个人有10块钱的，就是感谢你的时间和精力。
So if you are interested in enrolling in the CARE registry, we ask you to visit mind.uci.edu/care, and you can enroll in the CARE registry.
好，那么如果听众里面大家有兴趣的话呢，我们邀请你来参加我们这个网站进去做一个注册，回答一些简单的问题，那么参加我们的研究。
My thanks to Rachel for putting it in the chat, and I think with that we'll turn it over to Rachel, and then I'll be happy with Robin to answer questions after their presentation.
Thank you, Dr. Grill and Rubin. And you can see there are 4 questions in the chat room already. Maybe you can take some time to take a look. And thank you so much. Please stay with us. So now we are going to welcome Rachel and Susan from AARP, California.
Hi, everyone. Give me just a second to get my slides up and running, and then we will get going here. And there will definitely be time for Q&A at the end of our presentation for both ARP as well as Rubing and Dr. Grill. But let me go ahead and start with introducing myself. I am so very glad to be back with the Happy 50+ community. I really hope all of you have been keeping safe and doing well. My name is Rachel Stone. I'm a senior state and community engagement specialist with AARP Los Angeles. And having been a young caregiver myself, it is really meaningful to be with you here today, sharing tips and resources to support you and your loved ones as family caregivers, with extra tips and resources for those of you caregiving for loved ones with Alzheimer's and dementia. But before I get any further, I'd like to introduce my volunteer partner, Susan Wang, who will be providing today's Chinese translation.
大家好，我很高兴回到乐活50家，看到这么多熟悉的朋友。我希望大家一直都保持安全的距离，做得很好。我叫 Rachel Stone， 是 AARP 洛杉矶的资深社区专员。我期待今天分享我们关于如何支持您和您的家人作为家庭照顾者的介绍，尤其是今天的话题是关于照顾失智的亲人，还有阿兹海默的病人，我们会提供额外的提示和资源。不过在此之前，我想介绍我的志工合作伙伴 Susan 王，我将提供今天的中文翻译。谢谢各位。
Thank you so much, Susan. So let's get started and just start with acknowledging that caring for a family member or a close friend is one of the most important roles you'll play. And it may start with driving your loved ones to get groceries or to doctor's appointments, but As time goes by, you may find yourself taking more time off work, preparing meals, handling bills, and so on.
照顾家人或朋友是您将承担的最重要的角色之一。您可能是从开车送朋友去买菜，或者是家人去看医生开始。但是随着时间的越来越多的时间，您可能会花更多的时间从工作中抽出时间去准备餐点或处理账单。
And no matter where you are in your journey of family caregiving, just beginning to anticipate a need or helping to coordinate a big move or taking care of a family member full time, having a good framework to help guide both you and your loved one will definitely make the process easier.
无论您是在照顾的旅程中哪一个阶段，是刚刚开始，还是只是一次性的帮助搬家，或者是全职的照顾亲人，如果您有一个很好的路线图来帮助您指导您跟您的亲人朋友，这个将使过程更容易一点。
So when it comes to caring for a loved one, most families don't have a plan until a problem or crisis emerges. So it's really important to prepare for the future so you can better meet the demands of caregiving before you're in a crisis. So in this session, we'll share a framework to help you make plans to care for family members, neighbors, and loved ones, with some specific tips on caring for loved ones suffering from Alzheimer's or dementia.
在照顾亲人方面，大部分就像我们一样，我们没有想到很多，但是直到危机或问题发生，所以我们如果现在有时间的时候做好准备，这样子以后才会有更好的心理的准备。而且我们今天会分享一个框架或者是路线图，来帮助您制定一个护理计划。尤其今天我们专注于照顾有阿兹海默跟失智症的亲人或朋友。
So today we're going to share some practical information to help you care for your loved ones while also making sure to care for yourself. And so we're going to break this down into 5 steps: starting the conversation, forming your caregiving team, making a plan, finding support, and caring for yourself.
今天我们将分享制定护理计划的5个重要步骤，包括照顾您自己。所以这个5个重要步骤包括：第1，展开对话；第2，召集团队；第3，制定计划；第4，寻求支援，然后最重要就是要照顾好自己。
All right, so step 1, starting the conversation. Now, often families will avoid discussions about the future because it can be really hard to think about those changes in the lives of the people that they love most. And so because of that, many people wait until a crisis occurs before they talk about their values, their preferences, their wishes for healthcare, or details about their finances.
我们知道，让我们从第1步开始展开对话。我们知道，与亲近的人进行艰难的对话是非常有挑战性的，尤其是我们中国人可能更难启齿。但是我们必须要尽早展开对话。很多人等到危机以后才开始讨论自己的价值观和偏好，还有医疗保健的愿望，还有一些财务的状况。那如果我们不及早的开始这一些对话的话，在危机开始之后，就有很多的不确定性。
So let's start with this part of the conversation about reviewing finances, because money can be a particularly sensitive subject to talk about, but it's often at the heart of many decisions that you'll have to make with your loved ones. Now, AARP's financial workbook for family caregivers is a wonderful resource that will guide you through the process of reviewing and documenting finances for your care recipients. So Amanda will be sure to share that resource after today's call.
讨论财务跟金钱可能是一个特别敏感的话题，但是它往往是您跟亲人做出决定的一个核心。所以我们 AARP 的财务工作手册会帮助家庭护理人员指导您完成审核和记录的一个财务的方面。那 Amanda 会在今天的会议之后分享这个资源。
And a couple of key questions to start with. Ask your loved one to review their bank accounts, any investments, insurance coverage, and other relevant finances, assets, or incomes that can be used to cover caregiving costs. Find out whether they have long-term care insurance should they need it.
请您的亲人查看他们的银行账户、投资、理财方面的户头。还有保险的范围，然后是不是可以有长期护理的保险，可以支付一些比较长期的费用，然后另外还要把资产收入统统归纳起来。
And if the care recipient is suffering from dementia, try to put this piece into place as early as possible in the hopes that your loved one will still be able to provide necessary financial information and sign any legal paperwork that may be necessary.
如果护理的对象已经被诊断出有阿兹海默症或者是失智症，那么尽早对财务的规划是很重要的。您要知道这些东西是放在哪里。它的重要文件，比如说律师是谁、保险文件，然后他们如果必须要签署必要的文件，就是在他们还有意识的时候可以做这些动作。
Now, you may find that your loved one's initial response to your attempt to start the conversation is something like, I just don't want to talk about it. That's very common. Some people are private by nature, and it can be really difficult to admit that they need help, especially in a parent and child relationship. There can also be cultural considerations that make it even harder to start these conversations.
当您开始展开对话的时候，您会发现是非常困难的。可能您的亲人会跟你讲，我就是不想跟你讨论这些问题。因为他们觉得是他们私人的问题，或者是不想承认他们需要帮助，尤其在父母跟子女的关系中，也有一些文化的困难，所以这个使对话非常的困难开始。
Now, remember that you can have this conversation in pieces over a period of time. It doesn't have to be a formal sit-down event. So perhaps you can start by asking your loved one a simple question like, do you have long-term care insurance? And if not, is that something they'd like you to look into on their behalf? Or maybe try starting by talking about a caregiving experience of another friend or family member and use that as an example as a starting point for this conversation. And if you have siblings or other people who will be involved in caregiving, perhaps you can each handle a different part of this conversation.
请记住，您不需要一次的问这些所有的问题，可以分段分时间的进行对话，也不需要是正式的坐下来谈话，可能是在洗碗的时候或散步的时候，可以问一些问题，比如说，您是不是有长期护理的保险？如果没有，是不是想买一个长期护理保险？那如果你有兄弟姐妹的话，也可以大家分开来问一些不同的问题。
So we'd like to invite you to share some tips on what has, or maybe some experiences about what hasn't worked as well as you've attempted to have these conversations with your own families. So please go ahead and put your comments in the chat. As always, you're welcome to submit in English or Chinese. Susan, if you see any as they're coming in, feel free to read them out and let me know if there's any questions there.
Sure. 我们今天在座的朋友，可能您已经在照顾家人，可不可以分享一下您的经验，怎么样展开这个非常困难的对话？可不可以请您把您的经验放在聊天室里面，中文、英文都可以，谢谢。
So go ahead and submit. I'll keep moving on, but we'll come back and see what people have shared in the chat. All right, step 2 of preparing to care is forming your team, because caregiving is just too big of a job for one person. Trying to do everything yourself may lead to burnout and problems with your own health and well-being. So it's so important to form a larger network of family and friends and tap into community resources to share the load. Now, your loved one can help you identify willing team members like neighbors or friends from the faith community that you may not have thought of otherwise.
照顾亲人是一件非常艰难的工作，也不是一个人可以完成的，所以我们建议开始找一些团队来帮助，可能是您的邻居、朋友、教会的朋友，或者是寺庙的朋友。您可能没有想到的，他们都可以帮助您完成一些简单的任务，而且可以愿意分享他们的才能。
Now, a few tips on building and supporting your caregiver team. Determine how many team members you really need. Make sure that everyone on your support team is very clear about their responsibilities, and they should be supportive and willing to lend a hand to you and your loved one.
您的团队可以先确定团队成员的人数，然后安排他们做的事务、他的角色跟职责，然后最重要的就是要以照顾者为中心。
Another important thing is to assign roles and responsibilities. Everyone on your team should have something to contribute. So pay attention to each person's strengths and really be clear on what you need and what's expected.
最重要的就是看每一个人的喜欢做的什么职责，然后他们的时间的分配，所以每一个人都有很好的角色跟职责。
And last but not least, focus on the care recipient, because the key and often overlooked participant in this conversation is the person who's in need of care. So as much as possible, the person receiving the care should play a significant role in determining who should be on this team and what needs to be done.
有的时候我们忽略了应该要以照顾者为中心，我们可能忙起来就开始讲说我做什么你做什么，然后我们就忘记这个照顾者的意愿其实是最重要的。有可能的话邀请他们来参加你们的会议。
So now that your caregiving support team is in place, it's time to start building out your plan and assigning responsibilities. And again, as much as possible, do make sure that your plans are being made with the person you are caring for at the center of this discussion.
我们现在第3步就是制定计划。制定计划就是把其实你们被照顾人的意愿放在中心，然后制定一个计划来就是把他的意愿执行出来。
Now, options for addressing your caregiving needs will depend on finances, the willingness of your support team, and the resources available in your community. Now, a PDF copy of AARP's Prepare to Care Guide is available in both English and Chinese and will be shared with you after today's event. You can also order a free copy on AARP's website. And the guide has many pages included to help you think through your caregiving needs and document your plan.
您的照顾计划可能受制于财务、还有时间、还有其他的资源方面的影响。我们 AARP 有一个照顾亲人指南，是有英文跟中文版的。在今天的会议以后，我们会发送免费的PDF copy 给各位，然后这个指南就会一步一步的带领你制定一个照顾亲人的一个步骤。
So you have your team. You want to start off by holding a team meeting. It's one way to help you get things organized and ensure that everyone is on the same page when it comes to making and keeping the plan. So meet with your caregiving team face-to-face or virtually, and then assess the goals and needs of your caregiving plan before delegating responsibilities. Try to assign roles that match someone on your team with a particular skill set.
当你有团队以后，第一步就是要大家见一个面，然后制定一个大家都可以觉得合理的一个计划。然后因为每一个人的才能跟时间分配都不同，所以我们大家都可以同意这个计划，然后就可以照这个计划执行起来。
Now, during your team meeting, again, as much as possible, the care recipient should play a significant role in assigning roles and tasks. And don't forget to communicate. Really try your best to keep everyone informed as things may change.
我们刚刚提过了，被照顾的人应该是在这个谈话的中心，所以如果有可能的话，邀请他们一起来有一个制定这个计划，然后不要忘记跟大家分享这个资讯，因为如果大家都有很好的资讯沟通的话，就可以有很好的执行这个计划。
And designate one person on your team as the primary note taker. And consider using a cloud-based note systems like Google Docs, which everyone can access and update and easily view on their mobile phones. This can really be helpful if you're at a medical appointment with your loved one.
我们建议有一个团队团员，他是专门做笔记的，然后把这个笔记上传到一个云端的一个档案夹，比如说 Google Docs 还是其他的云端的文件档案夹，这样子每一个人你就可以随时看到这些文件，可以在您的电脑或者是电话上都可以看到。那如果您带亲人或朋友去看医生的话，你就可以随时随地的打开这个云端的档案夹。
Now for step 4, we encourage you to find support. It's really important to reach out for extra support when you need it. So let's talk about a few ways to locate the type of support you need.
我们第4步就是寻求支援，非常重要的，就像我们刚刚讲，照顾亲人不是一个人可以完成的事，所以我们现在就讨论一下，怎么样可以找到支援。
Now, there's different kinds of resources. So let's first talk about community resources, such as your local agency on aging, which can help connect you to a variety of support services like home delivered meals, transportation, adult daycare, care management, and more.
一开始从您的社区开始去寻找，比如说您当地的老年社区资源中心，它可以帮您去寻找一些在家庭看护的方面，还有可以送餐点到家里的服务，还有派车出来，日间老人照顾中心， 还有一些其他的社区服务等等。
And you can also check into services that are offered in your community through the Elder Care Locator, as well as California's Caregiving Resource Centers. I believe the closest one to most of you is the one based out of USC. Now, all of the resources I mentioned today are included in your Prepare to Care guide, as well as AARP's Los Angeles Caregiver Resource Guide that again will be shared with you after this presentation.
另外还有一些照顾亲人的资源中心，最近的离我们最近的可能是在南加大的一个家庭照顾社区中心，然后另外一个就是 Elder Care Locator， 它是一个上网去把你的 zip code 放在里面，就有很多资源会找出来。我们刚刚讲的这些您都不要担心，因为都在这个 Prepare to Care， 就是照顾亲人指南里面。那我们在会议以后会发送给大家。
And when you need it, consult a professional, because often your loved one's needs can be complex, especially when health, emotional, and financial issues are at play. So a lawyer, a state planner, trained social worker, or nurse can help you get the exact help you need. The Elder Care Locator and the Caregiver Resource Guide are great resources for finding that professional help.
有的时候您可能必须要找专业的帮忙，因为您的亲人或朋友的问题可能比较复杂一点，比如说他们的医疗，或者是精神状况，或者是财务的情况都不一样，所以您可能需要找一个专业的律师，或者是社工、护士来帮助您看看怎么样解决他们的问题。那我们刚刚提到的 Elder Care Locator 就是一个上网把你的家里的 zip code 放上去，他就会跟您讲你们附近可能有什么可以帮助您的资源。那我们等一下会传这个照顾亲人指南，它就会在里面，所以你们可以上网去看一下。
And one last thing is, if you are still working, ask your employer if they offer an employee assistance program. And remember that caregiving is covered by FMLA, the Family Medical Leave Act.
那如果您还在上班的话，请跟您的人事室工作的人事室联络一下，看他们有没有什么方法帮助您去照顾您的亲人。因为有一个法律叫做 FMLA， 就是家庭照顾法律，它就是可以让您拿一些休假的时间，但是又可以保住您的工作，所以可以跟您的工作联络一下。
And the last step, but certainly not the least, is caring for yourself. Don't ever underestimate how difficult it can be to be a caregiver. Pay attention to your health and well-being, because the best way to ensure that you'll have the energy to care for your loved one is by taking care of yourself.
最后也是可能最重要的一件事，就是要照顾好自己。因为如果我们自己就是觉得很累，那就没有办法照顾好我们的亲人或朋友。所以我们必须要有的时候放松一下，然后让我们自己充电。这样子就可以照顾好我们的亲人或朋友。
Be sure, like we mentioned before, to tap into all of the resources available to you. Another tip is to use technology, personal emergency response systems for your loved ones, remote monitoring devices like indoor cameras and mobile apps can really help you coordinate your care and bring a peace of mind if you don't live with or nearby the care recipient.
所以就是用最好的资源，就是使用资源，比如说社工、护士或其他的专业人士来帮助您。然后另外一个我们想建议的就是使用这个科技，如果您可以用这个紧急 紧急急救这个科技，还是您可以有这个放电眼在家里，可以随时侦看您的亲人的情况，它也可以放到您的电话上面，所以您就可以随时关心您的亲人的情况。
And talk to your doctor. Let them know that you are a caregiver and discuss ways to manage stress. Take advantage of all the supports and services available to you as well. And last, again, certainly not least, take a break. Make that time for exercise, sleep, healthy eating, and having fun. Even if it's a short 5-minute call with a friend, take the time that you need to stop, breathe, and really focus on yourself so you can continue being the best possible caregiver you can be for your loved one.
让您的医生知道您是现在正在照顾亲人，看看他们有没有什么比较好的方法可以跟建议。然后最后我们是非常重要要给自己放松一下，不管是做运动，有很好的睡眠，要吃好的东西，或者是就是出去玩一下，就是5分钟也好，跟你的朋友聊一下，这样子你都可以放松，然后让你的身心都有一个舒缓的机会，你这样子才可以更好的照顾您的亲人朋友。
We invite you to put into the chat ways that you take care of yourself as a caregiver, or you're welcome to share if it's something you find challenging. It certainly is for many.
如果我们中间有照顾亲人的朋友，可不可以跟我们讲一下，您是如何放松自己？可能听音乐，或者是看一本书，或者是您可不可以分享一下您比较挑战性的问题，都可以，请放在聊天室里面，中文、英文都可以。
And as we conclude this presentation, I just wanted to let you know there are 2 additional AARP websites, our Caregiving Resource Center page and AARP's California's specific resource page. So links and phone numbers will be shared, but please know that you are not alone in your caregiving journey. AARP California is here to support you. Happy 50 Plus is here to support you. And I really look forward to following up with all the links and resources here that have been shared here today. Thank you so much for joining us. And I want to make sure to leave plenty of time for any Q&A for either ourselves or the team from UCI.
我们最后要留2个照顾亲人的连接，就在这个上面。然后我们最想要让您知道，您不是孤单的，我们 AARP 加州的 AARP 随时会跟您在一起。如果有任何的问题的话，可以跟我们或者是乐活50家联络。今天非常感谢各位参与今天的活动，谢谢。
Thank you so much, Rachel and Susan, for such wonderful and valuable resources to provide to the family caregivers. We do appreciate that. And let's move to the chat room. We got so many questions, and I saw Dr. Grill already answer some of them. So Robin, you want to translate, by order, or Dr. Grill, you want to say a few words? You can see people are so, engaging,
I'll say a few words. First of all, I want to say great job by Rachel and Susan. Really important messages that they were delivering that are easy to endorse. Caregivers are, we've had the great pleasure of working with amazing caregivers. They're in difficult positions. They need help, and they need to remember the lessons that Rachel provided, including taking care of themselves. UCI Minds' mission is to remove the need for caregiving. And I know that Rachel and Susan would be A-okay with us putting them out of business, for lack of a better term. And that's, where we exist, is to conduct cutting edge, state-of-the-art research to try to improve the way we diagnose and treat Alzheimer's disease and other neurodegenerative conditions. But ultimately, we really hope to be able to prevent these diseases altogether so that people can live out their lives without succumbing to memory and other cognitive problems. So I was definitely paying attention. It was a great talk. I commend them. While listening, I was trying to go through the questions in the chat and answer them in the chat to the extent that I was able. Of course, I couldn't translate them, but I'm happy to talk more about any of those particular things. Some of the questions were really, from clearly informed members of Happy 50 Plus, but also really synergized with some things happening at UCI Mind. There was a question about why women are at increased risk for Alzheimer's disease, and the risk of Alzheimer's disease goes up exponentially with age. So for every 5 years we live after the age of 65, our risk of getting Alzheimer's disease doubles. And we know that women are much better at living to those ages when the risk goes up. But we know that even if we account for survival, women are still at greater risk to get Alzheimer's disease compared to men. And this may be really important. We need to understand why this is. Some of the things I talked about as risk factors kind of make sense. Historically, women didn't have the same opportunities for higher education, more complicated, challenging cognitive professions. Even exercise, in the 50s and 60s was more available to men than women. And some of these things may play a role in the relative risk. But I think biology is important as well. And there have been some interesting suggestions that the genetic risk factors may work differently in women compared to men. Of course, the age-related hormone changes are quite different in women compared to men. And there's been a lot of work that I don't think we can really easily summarize yet. Nothing super conclusive about hormone loss, hormone replacement, and the like, and its relationship with dementia. So we're really proud of an initiative we have at UCI Mind. It's a partnership with Maria Shriver's organization, the Women's Alzheimer's Movement. And we've funded $500,000 in grants so far that have been turned into millions of dollars of NIH grants to really try to understand why women are at increased risk for Alzheimer's disease compared to men. I think that I would encourage people to check out our website, enroll in the CARE registry, and learn more about these exciting and important endeavors to shed light on these key questions.
Okay, thank you. And Josh, I think some people, they have questions about if they have to be Californians to register for this.
No, definitely not. And we're working on other grants to expand the CARE registry beyond California. It's not exclusive to California, but most of the members so far have been in California. And I would say, no, you don't have to be in California. And if you're interested in this and you're not in California, or your friends and family aren't in California, don't let that stop you from sharing that link with them. We want this thing to be as big and useful as possible. There's no obligation to be in a study when you enroll in the CARE registry. You're just saying you're okay with learning about them. And so it's really risk-free. As a person who studies clinical trials and puts people in drug trials where we have to go over lengthy consent forms about the potential risks, enrolling in a registry is really kind of risk-free. The biggest risk is you might get a couple of emails you want to ignore or phone calls you don't want to answer. We hope you will answer those emails. We hope you will answer those calls, but it's a great opportunity to give Asian Americans and Pacific Islanders a voice and a presence in research that is, trying to change the way we treat, diagnose, even think about these diseases. Yeah.
Okay. I think one more question is about the results. I think they asked about, people participate in the study, will they get the results of the test or study?
Right. So Heiwan and Grace put in the chat an important thing that I didn't say, which is that you can enroll in the care registry in English or Chinese. But this is your question is an important one. What do people get back from the researchers when they participate in research? And it very much depends on the study. Now, I've written about this to some extent, and we do believe that we should give things back to people. I think, we believe we should pay people to be in research studies because their contributions are incredibly important to our mission. But it's always going to be study by study basis that we can tell people what they're going to get back. In some cases, you get back serious information. And I put a link to a new clinical trial that's an Alzheimer's prevention study, where to be in the study, you have to have one of those brain scans, and we tell you the results. And the results determine whether you're eligible to participate in a study of a drug or not eligible to participate in that study. So that's an example where you get serious level individual results. For the most part, we like to give people information back about what we're learning at UCI Mind. We take that very seriously. We are excited in we hope, post-pandemic world to begin having our in-person sessions annually, where we invite all the participants in studies at UCI Mind to tell them, what did we learn this year because of you all, because of what you made it possible for us to try to do. We also like to produce reports when studies finish so that participants in that study know the top line results. When people enroll in clinical trials, sometimes it takes longer than others, but we like to tell people, if it was a placebo-controlled trial, which arm of the trial did you end up being assigned to, and things like that. So it's always study specific, but there is a strong interest to give back to people who make it possible for us to do our work.
Thank you very much. And Susan, I think I just share comments from one of the participants. So you can check, he or she is a caregiver, and he's sharing, how he be relaxing himself. Did you see that?
Yeah, thank you for sharing. This person is walking, singing to relax. Yeah, and Rachel, I do believe we have a question about long-term care. Is there an age limitation to purchase long-term care, and how do they purchase long-term care?
That is a great question, and I am not someone who can speak to the details of signing up for long-term care, but what I can do is provide you with AARP's financial planning guide for caregivers, which does cover the eligibility requirements, questions to ask your insurance provider, and considerations as you're looking at different long-term care options. So I will share that with you, and then if you have any follow-up questions, I'll put you in touch with the right person.
Thank you. Any more questions for our speakers today? I think we can open the mic for 5 minutes, should be fine. So anybody has more questions, just feel free to open the mic. 大家可以打开麦克风，问最后5分钟的问题，如果还有问题，不然我们就要下线咯。今天的嘉宾都非常忙碌哦。Our speakers today, they have very tight schedules, and we truly appreciate they reserve the time for today's meeting. Thank you so much. And we can see Rachel shares so many links in the chat room. So people, if you're interested, please take a look. And Dr. Grill also share a lot of answers in the chat room as well. Thank you so much. So if no more questions, thank you.
I do have a question for Dr. Grill.
Okay.
I want to participate in the trial, but I'm concerned I don't want to take medications or any kind of shots. Would it be possible to just register, and I don't want to have any kind of intervention?
Yes, absolutely.
Yeah.
So let me again be really clear about this. I talked about, clinical trials, but the care registry is for way more than just clinical trials. And, people might be invited to participate in a survey study. They might be invited to participate in a study of lifestyle. They might be invited to participate in a study of memory exercises. You're not agreeing to anything when you enroll in the CARE registry, except the opportunity to be informed about studies that might be right for you, and where there's an interest in making sure Asian Americans are represented in the science. And so, yes, I believe we will need aggressive studies to find true preventions and cures for these diseases, but there's lots and lots of different types of research. We have studies here at UCI Mind where people come in once a year, let us test their memory, draw their blood, other things like that, but no interventions of any kind to understand how does the brain change with age. And those are large studies in part so that we can have some people who develop memory problems over time and others who do not, and we can look at how these things change historically. But I have to be very careful. I'm a trialist. I like to talk about studies where we're testing interventions, but there is a lot of research that does not involve an intervention or a drug treatment.
Great, thank you.
Can I ask a question? Yes. Sorry, I was late, so this was probably covered earlier. I was just wondering, the CARE registry page, is it just on the caregiver resources page on the AARP website? Is that the states.aarp.org/California/caregiver-resources? Is that the page for CARE registry?
I'm going to put it in the chat again. I don't honestly know if the CARE registry might be linked through AARP. That seems possible. But you just got it twice in the chat.
Got it.
Through our UCI Mind link.
So I don't have to be in Southern California to join the CARE registry, but I do have to be there if I want to participate in the clinical trial to have a PET scan done on me, right?
Not exactly. So the CARE registry is available to any Asian American Pacific Islander adult, pretty much wherever they are. Mm-hmm. And if you enroll in the CARE registry, you'd say where you are, and so mm-hmm. that people can contact you about studies that they're recruiting to that you might be appropriate for.
I see. So for a PET scan, it could be done in the area where I live instead of UCI.
Right. So wherever you live, the study I mentioned, which is called the AHEAD study, might be happening near you, and you could enroll near you. And you could just check out the AHEAD website if you want to learn that.
I see.
And I can put that website in the chat as well. I don't know for sure that the CARE will be a source for the AHEAD study specifically, so you might do both. And mm-hmm. I tell people all the time that there's no reason you can't be in more than one registry. Sometimes you can't be in more than one study, but you can enroll in a registry and pursue studies on your own, mm-hmm. rather than waiting to see if someone invites you.
Thank you very much.
You're very welcome.
Thank you. So as a happy 50 plus, we're so happy and so proud to be the community partners for UCI Mind and AARP California. So look forward to inviting both of you in the future and to tell us more. Thank you so much. Thank you, everybody. Thank you for joining us.
Thank you. 谢谢大家.
See you next
Thank
time.
you.
下次见.
Thank you so much.
Thank you next time.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you,
Bye-bye.
Rachel.
Really
Thank you,
appreciate
Doctor. Thank you, Rubin. Thank you, Susan.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Bye-bye. Thank you.